Hello, Eva.
Welcome to Vati of Sweden show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Wonderful.
Yeah, so I would like to introduce you a short of whom you are and what you're working with. So you're a keynote speaker, a moderator and a facilitator, and an educator for sustainable development.
That's it.
Yeah. And I know that you also been involved in global scout movement with violence prevention by educating youth, and also that you've been working with the UN Women with girls and women rights. Wow, wonderful. And you're program director for the goals.org.
Yep.
And
all the things, all the stuff.
Yes, and also she's a member of the Agenda 2030 delegation, commissioned by the Swedish government to support and simulate Sweden's implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, that's
That's wonderful. And I'm so happy that you're here.
Yeah, thank you.
And that we have this opportunity to have this conversation about sustainable development.
Yeah, that's a wonderful opportunity. So I'm glad we were able to get together like this.
Yes. So you've also done a wonderful TEDx show that was I think in 2017 in Malmö.
2 years ago. Yeah. That's great.
And you talked about purpose.
I talked about purpose.
So and I know that the topic was like purpose. If you can't stop thinking about it, don't stop working for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was actually something I wanted to explore a little bit about purpose, because we can see that purpose is getting to become a trending word, especially within business. And why do you think purpose-driven organizations are performing better?
I mean, I think it starts with looking at the fact that organizations that aren't purpose-driven are performing worse. I think if you start looking at that, so why are they performing worse? Well, because purpose-driven organizations, they have something higher to aim for. It's not just the next sale, the next product, the next small piece of the cake, if you so want, but it's actually always looking at the bigger cake. And how can we make the bigger cake last for longer and be shared among more people? And that to me is part of purpose. Your purpose to go further than just the next step. And that's why I think that purpose-driven organizations perform better, live longer, because they grow with their time. And also I think purpose-driven organizations know when it's no longer their time. I think we very little talk about knowing when to wrap up. There's a time and place for everything, and either you grow with that and you do that successfully, or you also know, like, you know what, up until here and that's it and that's fine, and then we do something else. That purpose is just as fine. You don't have to live for 100 years. I think there is something to it to know what your time and place is.
So what advice would you give companies how to start working with purpose, because not all organizations are like purpose driven. So what advice do you have for them?
I mean, in the TED Talk, I found it really difficult to put down what is it, and I tried to think of a situation where I myself had to redefine my purpose, and I came to a time and place where I had to write everything that was important to me on an A4 piece of paper, and then draw a line. It's like, okay, well, this is what I want to work towards. A very basic way. And I think at the end of the day, companies should do the same. Who are we there for? Who do we serve? What is it that we want to achieve? What is our core? And I don't necessarily mean the core values that every employee should know and that may or may not be filled with action, but really, what is it that we do every day, over and over again, that fulfills a purpose for the company, but also for individuals that are part of this company, that build this company. And I think then you get really close. But what is it? And if you like the cake image that I mentioned before, that's what's our cake? And how do we eat it? What do we put on the cake? What is that cherry on top of the cake that makes it worthwhile? And I mean, there are a lot of brilliant examples that you can draw from, examples that you can choose in the history, looking back, but also looking forward, from small companies to big companies. that do more than just what their
Yeah.
what their product are famous for, shall we say?
Yeah. So would you say that purpose is like some kind of an energy that mobilizes people to, you know,
Yeah.
to perform better, or?
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the purpose basically stimulates that need of belonging. It
Yeah.
stimulates a need of contributing and being important. And I think it's fair to say that purpose can be money. If your purpose is money and that's your main driving force, like we want to make as much money as possible, and we are willing to work the extra mile to do that, fair enough by me. That may be not my purpose, and that may not be something that I would put highest on the on my ranking. But if that is what the purpose is of your company, then fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think for most of us, it's actually more than that. Money alone isn't going to do it.
No.
The purpose is to make the best product that is interesting for the most people, or versatile, or it is to create a better life for someone else, or it is to stimulate the market in a new and exciting way, or whatever it, you know. I mean, there are so many businesses.
Yeah.
When you grow up, you think you only know 3, but then when you start looking at, there's so many wild and crazy opportunities. So it is really that energy that keeps you going.
Yeah.
And that makes your everyday hard work worthwhile.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful. I think that's really fantastic to describe it like that. I mean, and also the visualizing it as a cake. That's a good one.
I like cake, so
You
that's
like
that.
cake?
That was an easy one.
Yeah.
All kinds of cake.
Yeah. So, and if we just get into the agenda, Agenda 2030 delegation,
Yeah.
which is also kind of purpose-driven task or project. What would you say is key for Sweden to integrate the agenda into the Swedish society?
Yeah. I mean, there are many things. The formal work of the delegation finished last year in March, when we handed over our recommendations to the government, and so now it is up to the government and parliament actually to take this work forward. I mean, personally for me, I think the importance is that the agenda becomes DNA of all organizations, big and small. And where we actually look at everything we do through an Agenda 2030 lens.
Yeah.
So when I speak to youth organizations, for example, I tell them, it's like, put on your Agenda 2030 glasses and look at your decisions.
Yeah.
So say you're organizing this big camp, which the Scouts in Sweden will do next year. So when I talk to them, I say, it's like, wow, what is the Agenda 2030 perspective of all the planning that you do, from transport to prices to participation? Who's going to be there? Who's not going to be there? Who should be there? And this is the same for government and public organizations.
Yeah.
Which goals are we achieving on? Which goals are we not achieving on? Which goals are we contributing negatively towards? Which goals are we contributing positively towards? And really put on those glasses and make the Agenda 2030 the core of your planning, of your business planning, of your organizational planning. What's in the next 10 years? Well, it's only 10 years, goodness.
Yes.
Time flies when you're having fun. In the next 10 years, what is it that you want to achieve, and how will you make sure that you achieve on all those goals until then? Because, I mean, Sweden is in the pole position, right?
Yeah.
But we're not in the pole position because we're best. We're actually in the pole position because everybody else is so incredibly bad. And that's nothing to be proud of, but I think it's something to be honest with.
Yeah.
So whoever I speak to, or whoever we do these trainings with, etc., like, you know, if just because you're winning on the 100-meter race doesn't mean you stop running at 75 meters, right?
Yeah.
So you continue to look at what is it that we do right, what is it that we do wrong, and what is it where we can really, really do better. And change is necessary, and we will all feel it in one way or another.
And, well, I mean, Sweden is actually leading the SDG ranking that the Sustainable Development Solutions Network are measuring. So if you would give some advice to the other countries, what advice could you give them to perform better or do better? What could they do? Because you said we are not the best.
We're just best by comparison. I think I mean we're doing a lot of things very well. I think we do plan with the environment in mind. We do plan with our people in mind. I think that is something that is core and that other countries certainly can do better. But there is no, when it comes to sustainable development, there is no one size fits all. There is no way like, oh, do it the Swedish way. That will not work in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
So, or in Asia. And the beauty of the Sustainable Development Goals is that they are applicable to every single soul on this planet. So really what it is to go to the drawing board. It's like, what do the goals say? What do they state? And how can we implement that in our work? And then keep talking to each other. I think it's one of the most and biggest important messages in the world at the moment. It is, we're doing it together.
Yeah.
We can't pull ourselves out
Yeah.
and think that everybody else will fix it. If this pandemic has shown us anything, then it is that we are all connected, and if it is by an invisible virus that started somewhere and then is everywhere and has such power. And sustainable development is the same thing.
Yeah.
We need to all contribute, we all need to change, we all need to do things towards it, but it is not my responsibility or a single country's responsibility. It is a collective responsibility of a collective society and the multilateral organizations and support networks that we have with other countries. So to really know that we're in this together and not just say it but actually work in that way.
Yeah. So if for the audience, I mean, if they're listening now and being a person, a professional, so what can a person do to start to transform herself or himself into the agenda?
For me, it is one of those exercises, and it may sound simple and maybe a bit silly, but it is waking up in the morning. It's like, what is it that I can do today? Yeah. And there are 17 goals to choose from, so you pick one, and if you do it by random or by chance or by throwing a dice, doesn't matter. But just start somewhere. Yeah. And sometimes it is educating yourself more about a topic that you don't know anything about. So there's this beautiful thing called the target finder. I don't have anyone with me right now. I usually do, but you just flip it. Yes. And then you have, say, target 4.7, education for sustainable development. Yeah. And then, well, what can I do for education for sustainable development today? It's like, well, maybe I can speak to my niece and nephew about sustainable development. Yeah. Or maybe I can call my friend and ask her about how she recycles, or what's the best way to where's the best way to go secondhand shopping, or whatever it is. Like it isn't about instantly transforming everything about you and what you do, but it is about making conscious choices. So am I buying this for the right reason? Am I taking the car for the right reasons? Yeah. Am I planning this holiday in the most sustainable way? Or is there other ways for me to achieve the same pleasure but in a different fashion? Like I think it is about always asking that second question one more time. It's like, is this really what I want to do, or is there a better way for the planet and the people around me to do it? Yeah. And that is actually not that hard. No. And everybody can do that without having to do radical changes. Because at the end of the day, I mean, radical changes and personal contributions are important, but it is the system that needs to change. Yeah, yeah. So it is, and I don't want to put that responsibility on a single person and shame you into action. I want to encourage you to join us on the sustainability journey, and I want to encourage you to make sure that we have politicians in place that put this forward, that we have international corporations in operational mechanisms in place that put this forward, because that's when the system can change. Yeah. That's when we can start offloading our carbon footprint to some other countries and make ourselves look better when others don't, etc., etc. It's the system that needs to change. Yeah. And we as individuals can contribute to that, but it isn't our sole responsibility as a single person. It is a responsibility for all of us. Yeah.
Great. So thank you. That was really thorough about the Agenda 2030, and I'm super excited about our governments and the parliament's work with Agenda 2030 and to see more, of course. Yeah. So I was thinking about gender equality because that's the SG number 5. Yeah. Yeah.
High five.
High five. We just love SDG
Yeah.
number 5. So, and you've been working with the UN Women, and I know we've been talking about how you could transform companies to become more gender equal, and you had these wonderful ideas of how. So would you please share it with us? Give us some tips on what companies can do to become more gender equal.
Yeah. I think for me again it is about starting simple. And one finding that we found in schools, and that applies for companies as well, is that when you use a gender timer, so that's basically an app that you can use, and you can press a button if it's a man speaking or a woman speaking.
Gender timer.
Yeah, it's really useful in conferences.
Yeah.
It's really useful in conferences.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you push the button.
You push the button and you see, well, how do we do? And kids in schools, even when they're very with very conscious teachers, what we consider it 50-50 when the actual figures show us that it is 60-40. So the boys still take more place than the girls do, you know, and that's just how our perception. So one way to do it is, without again shaming and blaming and anything, is just to see, like, well, how do we, you know, just check, like, what's the speaking time in our work environment? Does that correspond to how many men and women are in the room? That's the one. I think another one is really work on those internal structures that have to do with pay. So to really close the gender pay gap, it is unbelievable to think that in 2020 we're still looking at vast percentages and differences when it comes to men's and women's pay. And it is something quite simple actually to look at. Well, okay, what's the profession, what's the job task, and are we paying them the same or not?
So kind of having a routine in the company to have this check
follow-up
annually, follow-up,
see, and how are we doing? Because for me it's like, okay, if we're not doing it right now, it doesn't mean we can't do better tomorrow.
No.
But you don't know if you don't check.
Yes.
So to have very clear gender equality guidelines, goals and strategies, it is nothing, we know it is nothing that just happens. Gender equality is so, or gender inequality I should say, is so normal in our perception, in the way that it is not normal on any level. It's not okay that 50% of the population earn less and work harder and have all kinds of other thresholds. So any type of inequalities, and then, you know, you add race and ethnicity and all of it to it, and the picture only becomes worse. So for us to really overcome those struggles, we have to measure and we have to do something about it. Look at it, look at the facts and say, okay, this is not good enough, so we do better. And how can we do better? Well, then there's those, but only what gets measured gets done. So
exactly, that's
really have to have to look at the facts and be okay to be unhappy about it. I would love to see more companies go and say, you know what, our stats on this topic are really bad. They're shit, they're bad. Like, let's do something about it. Rather than just celebrating what looks good or what may be good on paper, but to actually look at, you know, what can we do better. So that's so gender timer is a really easy one for the workplace.
Measure.
Gender pay gap is the other one, and then just really look through what is it that we can do. And then talk to your fellows around, you know, who's taking the parental leave, who's looking after the kids and picking them up from preschool, and check with yourself, like, what do you think is okay, what do you think is strange? And I mean, I've become a mother almost a year ago, and I encountered countless of ideas and ideals and should it and should do's, and I mean, I post a picture of me holding the baby and everyone, oh cute, the baby's so cute, and my partner posts a picture of him and the baby and everybody, wow, what an amazing dad, he's holding the baby. And I don't know to whom that is actually more discriminating, because I think it's really bad for him to be seen as someone who he's, you know, like, wow, you what an amazing thing, you're holding your child. And he's like, of course, it's my child. Like, he found that almost offensive. Whereas I'm like, yeah, of course I'm holding the child. Look at her, she's wonderful. So I think there's really a need for us to take a hard look at ourselves, what we assume is good and what we promote and encourage, because that will change a lot of things, and it will change perception and feelings and driving forces quite significantly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thank
there's
you
a lot to
so
be said
much.
on this.
Yeah, I know. That's a topic we both love.
Yes.
But thank you very much, Hannah,
You're very
for
welcome.
coming and sharing your expertise and experiences
Thank
with
you.
us. So good luck
Pleasure.
with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To you.